Counterstroke, Part 1. Day began to dawn. Fantine had a feverish and sleepless night, yet full of happy visions. She fell asleep at daybreak. The sister, who had watched with her, took advantage of this slumber to go and prepare a new potion of quinine. The good sister had been for a few moments in the laboratory of the infirmary, bending over her vials and drugs, looking at them very closely on account of the mist which the dawn casts over all objects, when she suddenly turned her head and uttered a faint cry. Monsieur Madeleine stood before her. He had just come in silently. "You, Monsieur the Mayor?" she exclaimed. "How is the poor woman?" he answered in a low voice. "Better just now, but we have been very anxious indeed." She explained that Fantine had been very ill the night before, but was now better, because she believed that the Mayor had gone to Montfermeil for her child. The sister dare not question the Mayor, but she saw clearly from his manner that he had not come from that place. "That is well," said he. "You did right not to deceive her." "Yes," returned the sister. "But now, Monsieur the Mayor, when she sees you without her child, what shall we tell her?" He reflected for a moment, then said, "God will inspire us." "But we cannot tell her a lie," murmured the sister in a smothered tone. The broad daylight streamed into the room, and lighted up the face of Monsieur Madeleine. The sister happened to raise her eyes. "Oh, God, monsieur!" she exclaimed. "What has befallen you? Your hair is all white." "White?" said he. She had no mirror. She rummaged in a case of instruments and found a little glass, which the physician of the infirmary used to discover whether breath had left the body of a patient. Monsieur Madeleine took the glass, looked at his hair in it, and said, "Indeed." He spoke the word with indifference, as if thinking of something else. The sister felt chilled by an unknown something, of which she caught a glimpse in all this. He made a few remarks about a door that shut with difficulty, the noise of which might awaken the sick woman, then entered the chamber of Fantine, approached her bed, and opened the curtains. She was sleeping. Her breath came from her chest with that tragic sound which is peculiar to these diseases, and which rends the heart of unhappy mothers, watching the slumbers of their fated children. But this laboured respiration scarcely disturbed an ineffable serenity which overshadowed her countenance, and transfigured her in her sleep. Her pallor had become whiteness, and her cheeks were glowing. Her long, fair eyelashes, the only beauty left to her of her maidenhood and youth, quivered as they lay closed upon her cheek. Her whole person trembled as if with the fluttering of wings which were felt, but could not be seen, and which seemed about to unfold and bear her away. To see her thus, no one could have believed that her life was despaired of. She looked more as if about to soar away than to die. The stem, when the hand is stretched out to pluck the flower, quivers, and seems at once to shrink back and present itself. The human body has something of this trepidation, at the moment when the mysterious fingers of death are about to gather the soul. Monsieur Madeleine remained for some time motionless near the bed, looking by turns at the patient and the crucifix, as he had done 2 months before, on the day when he came for the first time to see her in this asylum. They were still there, both in the same attitude, she sleeping, he praying. Only now, after these 2 months had rolled away, her hair was grey and his was white. The sister had not entered with him. He stood by the bed with his fingers on his lips, as if there were someone in the room to silence. She opened her eyes, saw him, and said tranquilly, with a smile, "And Cosette?" Part 2. She did not start with surprise or joy. She was joy itself. The simple question, "And Cosette?" was asked with such deep faith and so much certainty, with so absolute an absence of disquiet or doubt, that he could find no word in reply. She continued, "I knew that you were there. I was asleep, but I saw you. I've seen you for a long time. I followed you with my eyes the whole night. You were in a halo of glory, and all manner of celestial forms were hovering about you." He raised his eyes toward the crucifix. "But tell me, where is Cosette?" she resumed. "Why not put her on my bed, that I might see her the instant I woke?" He answered something mechanically, which he could never afterward recall. Happily the physician had come, and been apprised of this. He came to the aid of Monsieur Madeleine. "My child," said he, "be calm, your daughter is here." The eyes of Fantine beamed with joy, and lighted up her whole countenance. She clasped her hands with an expression full of the most violent and most gentle entreaty. "Oh," she exclaimed, "bring her to me." Touching allusion of the mother, Cosette was still to her a little child to be carried in the arms. Not yet, continued the physician. Not at this moment. You have some fever still. The sight of your child will agitate you and make you worse. We must cure you first. Monsieur Madeleine was sitting in a chair by the side of the bed. She turned toward him and made visible efforts to appear calm and very good, as she said, and in that weakness of disease which resembles childhood, so that, seeing her so peaceful, there should be no objection to bringing her Cosette. Nevertheless, although restraining herself, she could not help addressing 1,000 questions to Monsieur Madeleine. "Did you have a pleasant journey, Monsieur the Mayor? Oh, how good you have been to go for her! Tell me, only, how she is. Did she bear the journey well? Ah, she will not know me. In all this time she has forgotten me, poor kitten. Children have no memory. They're like birds. Today they see one thing, and tomorrow another, and remember nothing. Tell me only, were her clothes clean? Did those Thénardiers keep her neat? How did they feed her? Oh, I want to see her. Monsieur the Mayor, do you think her pretty? Is not my daughter beautiful? You must have been very cold in the diligence. Could they not bring her here for one little moment? They might take her away immediately. Say, you are master here. Are you willing?" He took her hand. "Cosette is beautiful," said he. "Cosette is well. You shall see her soon. But be quiet, you talk too fast, and then you throw your arms out of bed, which makes you cough." In fact, coughing fits interrupted Fantine at almost every word. Monsieur Madeleine still held her hand and looked at her with anxiety. It was evident that he had come to tell her things before which his mind now hesitated. The physician made his visit and retired. The sister alone remained with them. But in the midst of the silence, Fantine cried out, "I hear her! Oh, darling, I hear her!" There was a child playing in the court. The child of the portress of some workwoman. It was one of those chances which are always met with, and which seem to make part of the mysterious representation of tragic events. The child, which was a little girl, was running up and down to keep herself warm, singing and laughing in a loud voice. Alas, with what are not the plays of children mingled? Fantine had heard this little girl singing. "Oh," said she, "it is my Cosette, I know her voice." The child departed as she had come, and the voice died away. Fantine listened for some time. A shadow came over her face, and Monsieur Madeleine heard her whisper, "How wicked it is of that doctor not to let me see my child. That man has a bad face." But yet her happy train of thought returned. With her head on the pillow, she continued to talk to herself. "How happy we shall be! We'll have a little garden, in the first place. Monsieur Madeleine has promised it to me. My child will play in the garden. She must know her letters now. I will teach her to spell. She will chase the butterflies in the grass, and I will watch her. Then there will be her first communion. Ah, when will her first communion be?" She began to count on her fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4. She is 7 years old. In 5 years she will have a white veil and open-work stockings, and will look like a little lady. Oh, my good sister, you do not know how foolish I am. Here I am thinking of my child's first communion." And she began to laugh. He had let go of the hand of Fantine. He listened to the words as one listens to the wind that blows. His eyes on the ground, and his mind plunged into unfathomable reflections. Suddenly, she ceased speaking, and raised her head mechanically. Fantine had become appalling. She did not speak. She did not breathe. She half raised herself in the bed. The covering fell from her emaciated shoulders. Her countenance, radiant a moment before, became livid, and her eyes, dilated with terror, seemed to fasten on something before her at the other end of the room. "Good God!" exclaimed he. "What is the matter, Fantine?" She did not answer. She did not take her eyes from the object which she seemed to see, but touched his arm with one hand, and with the other made a sign to him to look behind him. He turned and saw Javert.